I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Mr. Marc Wallace. Marc is one of our esteemed Colorado chairs. Marc has several groups, key executive, he's got a key group, got a trusted advisor group, the advancing leaders group. You've obviously created a heck of an ecosystem within Vistage, Marc. What brought you to Vistage? First of all, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Eric.
But what made you decide to do this? What set you on this path?
Well, I had previously been doing some executive coaching and consulting. In many regards, though, the travel demands got to be a bit of a problem. With my now second wife. My first wife unfortunately passed away a few years ago with heart failure.
Oh,
and but at the time, she'd ask me questions like, "Marc, why is it that you always have to get in airplanes to go do the work that you enjoy doing?" And then I get this phone call from Vistage that I had never heard of about 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. Saying, "Hey, look, we've heard a lot about the executive coaching that you do. We know that you serve on the board of directors of Colorado Business Bank. We know this, we know that." So they had a lot of information about myself, and they said to me that they thought that I would be someone who might be interested in serving the business community in Greater Denver, and would I be willing to come to San Diego to learn more about Vistage and see if there was a good fit. And I did that and made the decision in 2015.
One more airplane.
That doing the work locally made more sense than getting on airplanes.
I'm curious about your background. So you were, because a Vistage chair, usually this is sort of a second or third career for a lot of you guys.
That's true.
You are wise and sage in your leadership, and you get that from somewhere. What was your background like? So if we were to go back to young Marc back in the day, what was your career path, and how did you get from where you were to being a coach?
I had an awesome and wonderful career with the Dow Chemical Company. And I'm still friends with a lot of old Dow colleagues to this day. But 14 years with Dow in sales, marketing, strategic planning, and rose to a pretty high level at a relatively young age. And it was a bit of a shocker to the CEO when I let him know that I was going to leave Dow to build a consulting company in Boston. And he says, "Marc, what is going on with that? Where'd that come from?" And it really had nothing to do with my dissatisfaction with Dow. It really had to do with really helping my then business partner. We owned the company 50-50 to build an organization that can make a difference in the performance outcomes of people. And it started initially with people of color, but grew into being a full-fledged management consulting company. And 15 years after I made that decision to leave Dow and build this company, we participated in an IPO with 6 other companies. And so that public offering was awesome to grow from essentially nothing to being traded on Wall Street in such a short period of time. And we were having a lot of fun with that for several years before September 11th hit. And that put the company in a bit of a crunch. And long and short of that is that we sold off many of the assets of the company. And most of those assets are now owned by Korn Ferry in Washington, D.C. Many of my old employees are still employed and working there. I decided to kind of hang them up, and that was for two reasons. One, just dealing with all that for a period of time was challenging to say the least, and then also the loss of my first wife, and so I took a break for a couple of years. And what got me back in the game was a phone call from a board member at Gateway Computer Company who said, "Mark, look, we could really use your help. Um, we have fired the CEO and his entire executive team. And could you serve in an interim capacity to help us get through this period of trying to decide what we're going to do?" And for me, that was a very timely call because I knew I had a lot left in the tank, and chose to commute to Irvine, California for about 6 months while that transition happened. Acer Computer bought Gateway. And the board fundamentally said, "Hey, job well done. Greatly appreciate your contribution." And that's literally what started me on the track of doing the individual coaching, strategic consulting that I now do.
That's a really cool story, and certainly that's a big journey.
Yeah.
Around what year was it that you started your consulting business?
You mean by myself?
No. When you left Dow
So
to join your partner.
I left Dow. Let's see, it was 1998.
There was, I mean, and certainly there's in this country the
You
racial
know what?
environment.
My apologies. My apologies. I gave you the wrong answer, Eric. It was 98 that we went public.
Oh, okay.
I left Dow in 83. So
Oh, wow.
15 year period between 1983 to
Oh, wow.
1998.
And clearly, you mentioned working with people of color, and certainly that is, I mean, and the 90s as well, but in the 80s, I mean, that was an important challenge to take on.
Well, it was. See, at Dow, there was no one else that looked like me in any of the high-level jobs that I held at Dow, the world's largest chemical company. And I was a first to do a number of different kinds of roles in the company. Never ever felt, frankly, that any of the jobs that I held had anything to do with my color, but I really saw a lot of things that were happening in the company that people were having trouble with. And in fact, people would come to me often saying, "Mark, I've got this concern or issue. Can you help me think about that?" And so internally, I kind of played a role of trying to be supportive, never losing sight of the fact that it was all about getting the job done, regardless of who you were. Um, in fact, many of the jobs that I held, there were no women in those jobs either.
Right.
Right. So Dow was trying to learn how to do this and do it for the right reasons. And I knew there were a lot of other companies in the 80s that were having that same struggle.
I think that's an incredible contribution and something that obviously is a big part of your story. What made you, because you mentioned that you had started with that anchoring in working with folks of color versus then it expanded. What was that thought process like?
So my partner founded the company. He had worked by himself for 7 years, just basically working alone out of his home. And I knew him when I was at Dow, and he had made several attempts to try and pull me out of Dow, and I kept saying, "Jeff, I care a lot about your mission, but I am not the right person for this." I've got an incredible career going on here at Dow. And he says, it took me a while to come to agree with him on this, that the mission was much bigger than my own career at Dow. And that we both realized that if I left Dow, there's a small chance that I might be able to do as well leaving Dow. All right, as compared to staying at Dow, and so fundamentally, when I spoke to the CEO about a calling, I said to him that my calling is to help get this launched, but it's really to become a full-fledged human resource consulting company because I care about people, period,
Right.
not just people of So my partner and I agreed that that would be the launching pad, but we would grow into being more expansive in our offering, which we did.
What was it like? Emotionally, what was it like when you had your IPO?
Oh, it was phenomenal. I was again on the board of directors, and the board was in New York, and we were there for the first time when the name goes across the ticker tape, and that was really, really exciting.
I can only
And
I can
and
only
really, the
imagine.
other part of the excitement, literally, was the joy of sharing with all of our leadership team and the employees about having arrived at that milestone. And there was truly the way my partner and I organized this was there was something in it for everybody. It wasn't just he and I.
That's really cool, and I like the way you frame that. And actually, it's a very Vistagey way of framing that.
Yeah,
What so you went through this very cool journey,
yeah.
and you ended up in San Diego, in Chair Academy.
hmm
How what was the transformation like for you going from doing this coaching business and getting on airplanes
hmm
to then not no longer being a coach but a
Right,
facilitator and
right.
in this big group setting?
Well, you may already know this, Eric. The biggest challenge of any new chair is the recruitment
Yes,
process
it
of
is.
forming your own groups. And my first group was a CE, a Chief Executive Group, and and so making that happen was the first challenge, and then where do you go from there? And then the other part of that was letting go of the consulting work that I was doing. So there's a very, very big difference between being, if you will, quote unquote, the expert. Mark, we have a big problem. Can you come help us out?
Right.
Versus, as you point out, the facilitation part of being a chair. And so even after I launched my first group, it took about another year before I had completely stepped away from the consulting work. Now, when I say completely, almost completely. And what I mean by that is that every now and then I get pulled into a situation where I'll try and help out a little bit in that regard, but I try to minimize that.
Right. What's been the most, I don't know, inspiring, joyful? What's been the best part of being a Vistage Chair for you?
The best part for me is I do believe that I am blessed, if you will, with listening skills that lead to questions and thoughts that could be helpful to the people that I'm chatting with. And it's really, really, for me, pretty significant when, through conversations that I've had with people, whether it's about personal or business matters, that they let me know that those conversations really helped them with what they were dealing with. And there have been a lot of those already. And fundamentally, we know that most folks, most people have something of like, where they know that they need to talk to someone about something, but they don't know who. And that's why therapists have full-time jobs.
Right.
And we're not therapists in Vistage, but there is a therapeutic aspect to our work. And if you can openly and honestly talk about something with your chair, it can make a big difference in however the person chooses to deal with it. And so my members let me know that they're able to do that. And for me, that's rewarding. And I think it's a big part of my mission and why I do what I do.
One thing also, and you touched on it, but that we don't talk a lot about is that when you come to the group, it isn't just about business. And that's also a big departure from being a
Right.
consultant, a business strategist. And, you
Exactly.
know, now not only are you in this different role, but you're also having to take on the other. You're hearing about more than what's going on at work. And
True.
what was that transition like for you?
That was not a hard transition for me, Eric, and it's been kind of who I am all of my life, frankly. Going back to high school and being a leader on sports teams, and the way in which I built the company, the teams that I built at Dow, we always had tremendous success, and I have always been close to not just the people that I immediately work with, but their families. And I want them to be close to mine. Um, and I think that humans were made to be this way. But sometimes we put walls between all that. And for me, it's never been allowed. Okay, it's always because if you want to put that kind of wall up, then you're probably not a good fit for the groups that I like to run.
I believe you fully when I hear you say that. And if I can say so, you've got a heck of a presence. And I've been in the room with you a couple of times. and
Right.
and you're somebody who is felt, and you can tell the way that you talk to folks how much you care. And
Right.
I'm especially glad that we finally got to sit down and do this,
Yeah.
because you have that, you definitely have that thing about you. And I don't know what to call it, but it's a thing about you. And you have it. And a lot of chairs do, but not every person does, for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
for you, and the one of the most interesting things is that the relationship in the group between the chair
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
folks that are in the room with you, it's not a one-way relationship.
It's
What
true.
what's the biggest lesson that one of your members taught you?
Uh, I have learned from several of my members, actually. Um, it's really interesting in that you wish, in retrospect, you could have done some things different, even though you feel pretty good about what you did well. You always look back and think about how I could have handled certain situations differently. And for me, one of the biggest lessons I have learned is the importance, literally, of having someone to be able to talk to and work through challenges. When in my past, my belief was is that I always had to figure it out for myself.
Right.
All right. And
Isn't
that
it
it was
funny
a bit of a
how
sign of weakness to go talk to somebody else about something that I,
isn't it
So
funny how the
it's,
shoemaker's kids end up barefoot?
and so I literally, and I've had this thought many, many times where there have been a lot of times in the past that I wish I'd just gone to go talk to people instead of making a lot of the mistakes that I made.
If I can ask, now that you have seen that, who do you talk to? Who's your person?
I am a person of faith, and my pastor is someone I talk to a lot. I am in a second marriage. Again, my first wife passed away, and I've now been married for 10 years. And I have conversations with my now wife that I never had with my previous wife. And it wasn't because I was trying to be secretive.
Right.
It's just, it was just sort of the way it was. All right. And so I involve her. She joins me when spouses are welcomed into the retreats. She is an active participant in all kinds of ways. So she's known throughout all my groups. We have people that come to our home for barbecues and fun stuff. And so she's just much more involved in a lot of what I have going on professionally, which also adds joy to doing the work.
I think it's nice for everybody when the Vistage group becomes a family affair.
Yeah.
And you get to go, and like you said, you get to go to retreat, or you have a holiday party, and you get to and you get to meet the spouses, and
Right.
every now and then you get to meet somebody's kids, and that's just like amazing.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the thing that, more than anything else, that makes you want to continue doing this? What's the everyday driver for you?
I don't know if you know this, but there are quite a few chairs in their 80s and even a few in their 90s.
Yes.
In fact, I just saw a video recording just last week of a 94-year-old chair in Florida that was skydiving.
Oh, wow.
Right? And there's studies that show that the people who stay mentally engaged tend to live longer, healthier lives. And so I hope to be able to do this for a long time. But what I've said to my members, Eric, all right, now this is true in the Marc Wallace fashion, and I mean it. If you guys ever think I'm losing it, would you let me know? I want to hear it from you. Okay, I don't want to hear it from some outsider. And so if I'm still adding value, having fun, and I'm still reading, and I'm still watching webinars, and I'm still doing all the things to keep me engaged, I intend to continue to do this so long as my health allows.
That's probably the best answer ever. I really like that, and like I said, you say that, and I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
So, hey, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me, Marc. You're a terrific asset for your members. If folks want to get in touch with you, if they have questions about Vistage, questions about your groups, questions about your special brand of honesty, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Marc.Wallace at Vistage Chair, and it's Marc with a C, by the way, not a K. Marc.Wallace at VistageChair.com, 303-641-5804.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.